Welcome to the first episode in a Legendarium series about Viking Ireland. In part 1, Sailing the Whale Roads, we will talk about how the Vikings learned about Ireland and the vast treasures within the island. An early Norse poem has a mother telling her son, "Get thee to a ship and go out on the seas and kill men." Many Norse sons took that advice to heart. It might be easy to think that a Viking had an easy job, just sailing around and ransacking villages. Yet a Viking voyage was long, laborious work. It covered hundreds of miles, ranging from Greenland and North America to the vast rivers of Russia. When the wind propelled the ship by sail, the Vikings' lot might be easier, but not by much. As many as 100 men crammed together on a ship no more than 90 feet long. If they had a chance to sleep, they huddled down on the deck in between the benches and sea chests. Norse sailors might have a piece of canvas to pull over themselves during inclement weather, if fortune favored. Bathing mostly consisted of spray coming over the gunwales, and men had no privacy. The bathroom consisted of yanking down their trousers and sticking their bottoms over the edge of the ship. Whenever the wind dropped, the Vikings took to their oars, with the captain shouting, "Pull!" every second or two. They might have to row for 2 or 3 days if a squall struck, back-breaking work that numbed the arms and buttocks. Any man not on the oars would bail water with buckets or even helmets. And even after they made landfall, Vikings might have to portage their ships across land to reach rivers. That meant dragging vessels over land on greased logs. Teams of runners moved 5 or 6 logs at a time to keep the ship sailing on land. Greasemen poured lard upon the logs to keep them from generating too much friction and possibly catching fire. If lard could not found, the Vikings used mashed up fish guts to smear up the logs. Chopping up the fish and smearing them on the timbers would be truly foul-smelling work. Even worse, most had been moldering in boxes for days. The squeamish did not go Viking. Going into the 8th century, the Irish found people coming to their shores. In western Norway, a search for new land led the Norwegians to colonize Orkney during the 600s. These Orkney Norse, aside from fishing and marginal agriculture, supported themselves by trade. Through their trade networks, the Vikings learned of Irish riches in silver and precious stones used to make legendary devotional pieces and reliquaries. Irish missionaries had even helped to bring Christianity to Scotland and northern England in centuries past. However, the Vikings soon realized that Ireland lacked the political strength to match her wealth and learning. 5 minor kings ruled over 100 or more fiercely independent chiefs. Hills and bogs made movement difficult outside the river valleys and ensured any Irishman would be hard-pressed to unite the island. Soon enough, the Vikings chose to help themselves to some of that poorly guarded wealth. In the year 793 AD, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle wrote, "Here were dreadful forewarnings come over the land of Northumbria, and woefully terrified the people. These were amazing sheets of lightning and whirlwinds, and fiery dragons were seen flying in the sky." Another 2 years passed before those storms came to Ireland. In 795 AD, monks on an island near Dublin saw a fleet approaching. Longships with dragons' heads carved on their bows carried a force of men who would plunder treasures accumulated by the monastery for over 2 centuries. A monk wrote, "There were 100 hard-steeled iron heads on one deck, and 100 sharp, ready, never-resting brazen tongues in every head, and 100 garrulous, loud, unceasing voices from every tongue. During the next 40 years, the Vikings came, but only in small groups, rarely more than 2 or 3 ships at a time. Using speed and surprise, these early Vikings stayed within 20 miles of navigable water, which kept them highly mobile. They targeted the monasteries to steal the fine metalwork used to embellish holy books and reliquaries, along with stored treasure. The Christians, of course, were horrified by the Viking eagerness to target monasteries, and the Vikings did not care so much about the religious importance of these buildings as the treasure they carried. And the monasteries were hit hard. St. Columba's famed monastery in Iona suffered a raid in 795 AD, was burned in 802 AD, and then saw 68 monks slaughtered by axe-wielding Vikings in 806 AD. That finally prompted the brothers to move their staff and treasure to inland Kells. The author of the Irish Annals of Ulster wrote in 820 AD, "The sea spewed forth floods of foreigners over Erin, so that no haven, no landing place, no stronghold, no fort, no castle might be found, but it was submerged by waves of Vikings and pirates." At the start of the Viking Age, the Irish monasteries consisted of earthen enclosures that contained a church, outbuildings, and the monks' residences. The Vikings found it easy to ransack these largely defenseless settlements. In time, the monks learned how to frustrate the Vikings by building tall stone towers known as round towers. The door was placed 1 floor up and could only be accessed by a ladder. Inside the tower, each floor was accessed by further ladders. If Vikings were sighted, monks took as much food and as many valuables as they could, climbed into the tower, and then pulled up the ladder. The Vikings would then raid anything they could from the nearly empty monastery, while the monks watched from the safety of the tower. Even if the Vikings did get into the tower, the monks simply retreated further up by pulling up ladders behind them. Such a strategy did not save the monastery itself, but it did save the monks and their greatest treasures. Round towers went up across Ireland, a large number of which are still intact today. Nonetheless, during these early years, the Vikings remained faceless wraiths, harrying the monasteries and small towns of the northern Irish coast. No Viking name appeared in Irish chronicles. Yet. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.